All right, fuck it. Let's cut the crap. Everybody's fucking tired of hearing about Mars missions, right? Another rover, another $1 billion down the drain. But India's, they're doing something kind of different this time with their Mars Lander mission, MLM for short.
Yeah.
And now, before you ask, it's not about selling essential oils on the red planet.
Yeah, right. It's their second trip to Mars, actually, following the surprisingly successful Mars orbiter mission back in 2014. Remember India beat China to Mars with that one?
Yeah, vaguely so. Uh, what the hell is MLM and why should we give a shit?
MLM, or Mangalian 2, as it's officially known, is set to launch sometime in 2026. They're using their heavy lift rocket, the LVM-3, which can carry a much bigger payload than what they used for the first mission.
Okay, but initially they were only planning on sending another orbiter. Like, what's the point? You've seen pictures of Mars a million times already.
This orbiter is different. First off, it's crammed with way more sophisticated instruments than the first MOM. Plus, they're using a technique called aerobraking to get into a tighter orbit around Mars.
Aerobraking. Sounds like some kind of space yoga.
Not quite. It involves using the friction from Mars's atmosphere to slow down the spacecraft and adjust its orbit. This allows for much more detailed observations.
Okay, so what kind of shit are they going to be looking at with this souped-up orbiter?
They're going to be gathering a ton of data on the Martian atmosphere, its composition, and even how the hell Mars lost most of its atmosphere billions of years ago.
Wait, lost its atmosphere. Is that why there are no little green men running around up there? Do they all suffocate or something?
Nobody's found any little green men yet. But understanding how Mars lost its atmosphere helps us figure out if it ever could have supported life, and maybe even what it would take to make it habitable for us someday.
So are we talking about terraforming Mars? Turning it into some kind of Earth 2.0? That's some serious sci-fi shit.
It's still pretty far out there, but understanding the past is key to figuring out the future, right?
Right, fair enough. But here's where things get even more interesting. In 2024, they decided to add a whole bunch of extra stuff to the mission.
Yeah, they threw in a rover, a helicopter, a sky crane to lower everything safely, and even a supersonic parachute.
A supersonic parachute? What the fuck is that?
You need it when you're landing on a planet with a thin atmosphere like Mars. A regular parachute wouldn't be enough to slow down a spacecraft quickly enough. A supersonic parachute is specially designed to handle those extreme speeds and pressures.
Damn, India's going all in on this mission. It's like they're saying, hold my beer, NASA, we're about to show you how it's done.
They're definitely aiming high. And with the rover and helicopter, they'll be able to explore the surface of Mars in ways we haven't seen before.
Okay, so tell me about some of the crazy shit they're packing into this mission.
One of the coolest instruments is called MODEX, which studies interplanetary dust particles.
Dust particles? Seriously, that sounds boring as hell.
Hold on. Understanding Martian dust is crucial for future missions, especially if we ever want to send humans there. Imagine trying to land a spaceship on a planet constantly plagued by dust storms. Not exactly a smooth ride.
All right, I get it. Dust is important. What else are they sending up there?
They've also got EIS, which studies solar energy particles and how they interact with the Martian atmosphere.
So, like, sunscreen is important even on Mars.
Well, it's not exactly sunscreen, but you're not wrong. Understanding how solar particles bombard Mars and strip away its atmosphere could help us protect future astronauts from dangerous radiation.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else that's going to blow our minds?
There's also the Langmuir Probe and Electric Field Experiment, ELPEX for short. It's going to be measuring things like electron density and electric field waves to help us understand how the Martian atmosphere interacts with the solar wind.
Solar wind. Sounds like some kind of intergalactic fort.
Well, it's not quite that, but it's a constant stream of charged particles from the sun. The solar wind is thought to be a major factor in stripping away Mars's atmosphere over billions of years.
So MLM is basically a Martian detective trying to piece together the mystery of the missing atmosphere.
That's one way to put it. But it's also going to be gathering a ton of data about the planet's current state, which will be invaluable for planning future missions, both robotic and human.
All right, let's hear about some more of these fancy instruments they're sending up.
There's PRISM, which stands for Polarization-Sensitive Infrared Spectroscopy of Mars. It's going to be analyzing the light reflected from the Martian atmosphere to figure out the properties of dust and clouds.
So, Martian weather forecasting.
You could say that. Understanding the Martian climate is crucial for planning any kind of long-term mission.
Okay, makes sense. What's next on the instrument list?
Last but not least, there's PREM, the plasma analyzer for the environment of Mars. This one's going to directly measure the composition of the Martian atmosphere by analyzing its plasma.
Plasma. Isn't that like what they use in those fancy TVs?
It's a bit more complicated than that. Plasma is basically a superheated gas where the atoms have lost some of their electrons. It's the most common state of matter in the universe.
Okay, so this Prim thing is going to be sniffing the Martian air to see what it's made of.
Exactly. By understanding the composition of the atmosphere, we can learn more about the planet's history, its current climate, and even its potential for supporting life past or present.
All right, so let's recap. This MLM thing is going to be studying Martian dust, solar particles, electric fields, and the composition of the atmosphere. They're basically throwing the kitchen sink at Mars.
That's a good way to put it. With all this, data scientists will be able to create a much more detailed picture of Mars than we've ever had before.
So India's not messing around. They're making a serious statement with this mission.
Definitely. They're establishing themselves as a major player in the world of space exploration. We've talked about all the cool instruments and the science goals, but landing on Mars is, it's no walk in the park.
Yeah, it's not like ordering a pizza. You can't just expect it to show up at your door without any hiccups.
Exactly. It's a ridiculously complex undertaking. First off, Mars is incredibly far away. It takes months for a spacecraft to get there, and during that time, it's exposed to all sorts of radiation and other hazards.
So it's like a cosmic road trip, but with a way higher chance of getting fried by cosmic rays or smashed by a rogue asteroid?
Pretty much. And then there's the landing itself. Mars has that thin atmosphere we were talking about, which makes it notoriously difficult to slow down a spacecraft enough to land safely.
Right, that's where that supersonic parachute comes in. That's
Yeah.
got to be one hell of an engineering feat.
It is. But even with a supersonic parachute, you need incredible precision to make sure you land in the right spot at the right speed and without smashing into a Martian mountain. Remember what happened to the European Space Agency's Schiaparelli lander back in 2016?
Vaguely. It didn't exactly have a happy ending, did it?
Let's just say it didn't stick the landing. It basically ended up as a very expensive crater on the Martian surface.
Ouch. So what's India doing to avoid turning their lander into a pile of space junk?
They're using a combination of cutting-edge technologies, including that supersonic parachute, a sky crane system similar to what NASA used for their Curiosity and Perseverance rovers, and a whole suite of sensors and radar to guide the landing.
A sky crane. Like those massive things they use to build skyscrapers.
Sort of, but on a much smaller scale. This sky crane is a rocket-powered platform that gently lowers the lander to the surface using cables. It's a pretty wild maneuver, but it's proven to be effective.
All right, so let's assume they managed to pull off this insane landing. What are they hoping to find once they're on the ground? Besides more dust, of course.
Well, one of the primary goals is to search for signs of past or present life.
Like fossils of Martian dinosaurs. Or maybe some tiny alien bacteria chilling out in the soil.
Probably not dinosaurs, but there's a chance that microbial life could exist or could have existed on Mars billions of years ago when it was potentially a much warmer and wetter place.
Okay, so how the hell do they plan on finding these Martian microbes?
The rover is equipped with a bunch of instruments to analyze the soil and rocks for any evidence of organic molecules or other biomarkers.
Biomarkers. Sounds like something out of a crime scene investigation.
Not far off. Think of biomarkers as any kind of chemical or physical evidence that suggests the presence of life. It could be specific molecules, isotopic ratios, or even fossilized structures that hint at past life.
So if they find these biomarkers, does that mean they've definitively discovered life on Mars? Like, case closed?
Not so fast. Biomarkers can sometimes be created by non-biological processes, so they have to be incredibly careful to rule out any false positives. It's like finding a fingerprint at a crime scene. You have to make sure it actually belongs to the suspect and not some random dude who happened to touch the doorknob.
All right, I get it. No jumping to conclusions. So what else are they looking for besides these elusive Martian microbes?
They're also going to be studying the geology and climate of Mars in much greater detail than we've been able to do before. They'll be looking at things like rock formations, the composition of the soil, and the history of water on Mars.
Didn't they already figure out the whole water on Mars thing? I thought that was a bust.
Not exactly. We know there was a lot more water on Mars in the past, and there's still water ice at the poles, and probably even underground. Understanding the role of water in Mars's history is crucial for figuring out if it ever had the potential to be habitable, and maybe even how to make it habitable again.
So we're talking about turning Mars into a giant water park.
Well, not exactly a water park, but the idea is to understand how water shaped Mars in the past and how we might be able to use it to potentially terraform the planet in the future. It's all about thinking long term.
Okay, so we've got the search for life, the study of Martian geology and water. What else is on their Martian to-do list?
They're also going to be testing out some new technologies that could be crucial for future missions, including human missions. For example, they're going to be experimenting with ways to extract resources from the Martian soil and atmosphere. Things like water, oxygen, and even building materials.
Sounds like they're planning on setting up a Martian Home Depot.
Well, not quite yet, but that's definitely the long-term goal for many space agencies. If we ever want to establish a permanent presence on Mars, we're going to have to figure out how to live off the land.
Live off the land. Like, are we talking about Martian farming? Growing potatoes in red dirt?
It might not be potatoes, but the basic idea is the same. We'll need to learn how to utilize the resources available on Mars to produce food, water, fuel, and building materials. It's a massive challenge, but it's essential if we want to make Mars a second home for humanity.
Damn, that's some seriously ambitious shit.
Now,
So basically, this MLM mission is not just about exploring Mars. It's about laying the groundwork for a future where humans could potentially live on another planet.
that's exactly it. It's a stepping stone towards a future that might sound like science fiction today, but could very well be reality for future generations.
Ah, okay, so we've talked about the science, the tech, the fucking crazy challenges of landing on Mars, but let's get into some deep shit for a minute. What about the ethics of all this? Are we just going to waltz onto Mars and plant our flag like some interplanetary Columbus? Claim it all for ourselves.
That's a huge question, and there are no easy answers. There's a lot of debate about the ethics of colonizing other planets, especially if there's even a remote chance of some kind of microbial life already existing there.
Right, like what gives us the right to, like, mess with another planet's ecosystem? Even if it's just some microscopic bacteria, like, who are we to decide they have to make way for humans?
That's the heart of the debate. Some people argue that we have a moral obligation to protect any potential life on Mars. Others say we have a right to explore and even colonize other planets as long as we do it responsibly.
Responsibly. What the hell does that even mean when we're talking about space exploration? It's not like there's an intergalactic rule book or something.
Well, for one thing, it means taking every precaution to avoid contaminating Mars with Earth bacteria. We've seen how invasive species can screw up ecosystems here on Earth. Imagine what would happen if we accidentally introduced Earth life to Mars.
Yeah, that would be a pretty fucked up thing to do. Turn Mars into a giant petri dish of Earth germs. Talk about a cosmic screw-up.
It's a legitimate concern. That's why missions like MLM are so meticulous about sterilizing their spacecraft before launch. But even with all the precautions, there's always a risk.
So it's like this delicate balancing act. We want to explore and maybe even colonize Mars, but we don't want to destroy it in the process.
Exactly. And it's not just about the potential impact on Mars itself, it's also about the impact on humanity.
What do you mean?
Think about it. If we manage to establish a permanent colony on Mars, it's going to change everything. It'll change how we see ourselves, our place in the universe. It might even change our relationship with Earth.
Whoa, that's some heavy shit. Are you saying we could have some kind of existential crisis on a planetary scale?
Maybe. But seriously, these are things we need to consider. What kind of society will we create on Mars? Will it be some utopian paradise, or will it just end up being another version of Earth with all the same problems?
Damn. So many questions. And probably no easy answers. I guess we won't really know until we actually get there and start building this Martian society.
That's part of what makes it so fascinating, though. Space exploration is all about venturing into the unknown. It's about pushing the boundaries of what we think is possible.
All right, so let's wrap this shit up. India's Mars lander mission is a pretty big fucking deal. They're not just exploring Mars. They're paving the way for a potential human future on another planet.
Right.
And that raises some huge questions about the ethics of it all and the potential consequences for humanity.
Absolutely. It's a mission that could change everything. It's about more than just science and technology. It's about our future as a species.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's our deep dive into India's ambitious Mars lander mission. We covered the science, the tech, the mind-blowing challenges, and the philosophical dilemmas that come with pushing the boundaries of space exploration. We'll leave you with this. If we do find evidence of life on Mars, even microbial life, what does that mean for us? Are we ready to share the universe, or will we just repeat the same mistakes we've made here on Earth? Think about it.